The mining colony on 442B was supposed to be safe. 300 families had made their homes in the crystal caves beneath the Purple Mountains, harvesting rare minerals that powered starship engines across the galaxy. The settlement was peaceful, protected by energy shields, and far from any known conflict zones. Stood at her post in the security center, watching the morning shift workers head into the deeper tunnels. As head of colonial security, she had seen many quiet days like this one. The biggest problems were usually equipment failures or the occasional dispute between miners over claim boundaries. Nothing that couldn't be solved with patience and common sense. But today felt different. The long-range sensors had been picking up strange readings for the past week. Ships moving in patterns that didn't match normal trade routes. Had sent reports to Earth Command, but the nearest military vessel was 6 months away. For now, the colony was on its own. "Security Chief," came a voice from behind her. Turned to see Doctor, the colony's chief administrator. His usually calm face showed worry lines. "What is it?" asked, though she suspected she already knew. "The sensor array just detected a fleet approaching our system, 12 ships heavily armed. They're not responding to our communications." Handed her a data tablet. "According to the ship profiles, they match known raider vessels." His blood ran cold. They were one of the galaxy's most feared predator species. Standing nearly 8 feet tall with razor-sharp claws and teeth, they lived for conquest and battle. They took what they wanted and left nothing but death behind. Worse yet, they had been expanding their territory for months, attacking colonies just like theirs. "How long until they arrive?" asked, already moving toward the weapons locker. 6 hours, maybe 7 if we're lucky. Began pulling out pulse rifles and ammunition. "Get on the emergency channel. Tell everyone to gather in the main cavern. Bring only essential supplies and any weapons they have. You can't be thinking of fighting them. There are 300 people here, including 60 children. They have warships and trained soldiers." Stopped what she was doing and looked directly at. "Then what do you suggest? We can't evacuate. Our transport ships are on the other side of the system delivering ore to the processing station. The emergency pods can only hold 50 people maximum." Fell silent. They both knew there was no good answer. For the next several hours, worked frantically to organize the colony's defenses. The energy shields around the settlement could hold against small arms fire, but they wouldn't stop military-grade weapons for long. The mining tunnels offered the best protection, with multiple escape routes and where a small group could hold off larger numbers. Divided their 67 adults with military or security experience into teams. Each team would guard a different tunnel entrance. The civilians and children would shelter in the deepest caves, protected by the strongest natural barriers. As she made her rounds, checking defensive positions and distributing ammunition, couldn't help but think about her own family back on Earth. Her sister Maria had just had her first baby, had been saving up vacation time to visit and meet her new nephew. Now she might never get the chance. The ships entered the planet's atmosphere just as the purple sun was setting. Watched through her binoculars as the sleek, black vessels descended like birds of prey. They landed in the valley below the mining complex, their engines glowing red against the growing darkness. "All teams, this is Security Chief," spoke into her communicator. "Remember your training, make every shot count, protect the civilians at all costs. If anyone breaks through our lines, fall back to position 2. The first wave of warriors emerged from their ships 30 minutes later. Had seen pictures and video footage of them before, but seeing them in person was different. They moved with deadly grace, their muscular bodies covered in natural armor plating. Each one carried advanced energy weapons that could cut through steel. The attack began with a bombardment of the outer shield generators. They knew exactly where to hit to bring down the colony's defenses. Within minutes, the protective barriers flickered and died. Teams opened fire as the first warriors reached the tunnel entrances. The narrow passages worked to their advantage, forcing the attackers to come at them in small groups. But they were experienced fighters. They used grenades and plasma charges to clear the defensive positions one by one. "Team 3 is falling back," came a voice over the radio. "Too many of them." Cursed under her breath. The aliens were pushing through faster than expected. She grabbed her rifle and ran toward tunnel entrance 4, where the sounds of battle were loudest. She arrived to find 5 colonists pinned down behind a hastily built barricade. Three warriors were advancing slowly, their energy shields deflecting most of the return fire. Took careful aim and fired 3 quick shots. Her military training kicked in automatically. 2 of the aliens dropped, but the third one spotted her position. The warrior let out a bone-chilling roar and charged directly at. She rolled to the side, avoiding a blast from his weapon that left a smoking crater in the stone wall. Before she could raise her rifle again, the alien's clawed hand knocked it from her grip. Drew her combat knife and dodged another swipe of those deadly claws. Though was larger and stronger, but was faster and more experienced. She had trained in close combat for 15 years, first in the Earth Defense Force and then in colonial security. The fight lasted only seconds, but it felt like hours. Managed to get inside the alien's guard and drive her knife between the plates of natural armor. The warrior collapsed, dark purple blood pooling on the tunnel floor. "Chief," called one of the colonists, "more of them coming through Tunnel 2. Retrieved her rifle and ran toward the new threat. All around her, she could hear the sounds of battle echoing through the cave system. Her people were fighting bravely, but they were vastly outnumbered. For every they killed, 2 more seemed to take its place. As she reached Tunnel 2, saw something that made her heart skip a beat. A group of young, no bigger than human children, were following behind the adult warriors. The aliens weren't just raiding the colony. They were treating this as some kind of training exercise for their offspring. The young looked almost cute compared to their fearsome parents. Their armor plating was softer, their claws shorter, their movements less coordinated, but knew that in a few years they would grow into the same deadly predators that were currently tearing through her defenses. "Team leaders report status," called into her communicator. "Team 1 holding position, but we're down to half ammunition. Team 2 has fallen back to the secondary positions. We lost and Team 4 is gone. They broke through the main barrier." Felt ice in her stomach. If Team 4 was gone, they had a direct path to the civilian shelters. She had to buy more time for people to evacuate to the deeper caves. "All remaining teams fall back to the central junction. We're going to make our stand there." Ran through the tunnels, gathering the surviving defenders. When she reached the central junction, she counted only 18 people left who could still fight. Their faces were dirty and scared, but their eyes showed determination. These were miners and engineers and teachers who had signed up for a quiet life among the stars. Now they were Earth's last hope on this distant world. "Listen to me," told them. "I won't lie to you, we're in serious trouble. But behind us are 300 innocent people, including children, our children. Every minute we hold this position gives them more time to reach safety." She looked each person in the eye as she spoke. "I know you're scared. I'm scared too, but we're human beings. We don't abandon each other. We don't run when others need protection. Today, we show these predators what humanity is really made of." They came at them in waves. The makeshift army held the junction for 43 minutes, falling back step by step as their numbers dwindled. The aliens seemed surprised by the fierce resistance. These were supposed to be soft colonists, not hardened soldiers. Found herself fighting beside Tom Martinez, a mining engineer who had never held a weapon before this day. Sarah, a school teacher, was providing covering fire with deadly accuracy. Bob, who fixed atmospheric processors, was lobbing improvised explosives made from mining charges. One by one, her people fell. Tom took a plasma blast to the chest while protecting 2 wounded colonists. Sarah went down fighting 3 warriors at once, buying precious seconds for others to escape. Bob died when he manually detonated his last explosive charge, taking half a dozen enemies with him. Finally, it was Just and 3 others holding the last barrier. Behind them, she could hear the sounds of civilians still evacuating through the escape tunnels. She had to give them more time, just a few more minutes. That's when she saw them again. The young, watching the battle from what they thought was a safe distance. The adult warriors paid no attention to their offspring, focused entirely on breaking through the human defenses. Made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. She had 1 grenade left, and she had spotted a structural weakness in the ceiling above the main tunnel. If she could bring down that section of rock, it would seal off the junction and trap the force on the wrong side of the collapse. But the young aliens were directly below the weak point. Looked at the children, barely bigger than the human kids she was trying to protect. They had done nothing wrong except be born to a warrior species. In their large, dark eyes, she saw the same innocence and curiosity that she saw in human children. For a moment, hesitated. These were predator young who would grow up to attack more colonies like this one. Letting them live might mean the deaths of countless humans in the future. It would be logical to trigger the collapse and eliminate them along with their adult protectors. But was a protector by nature, not a killer of children. She made her choice. "Get back!" shouted, running toward the young. She fired warning shots over their heads, forcing them to retreat to safer ground. Only then did she arm her grenade and throw it at the ceiling supports. The explosion brought down tons of rock, sealing the tunnel just as had planned. But she had used those crucial seconds to save enemy children instead of saving herself. As the ceiling collapsed, found herself on the wrong side of the barrier, facing down a dozen fully grown warriors with no ammunition left. The aliens stopped their advance, clearly puzzled by what they had just witnessed. One of them, larger than the others with more elaborate armor markings, stepped forward, recognized the rank insignia of a pack leader. "Human," the said in accented but clear English, "why did you warn our young?" Stood as straight as she could, facing death with dignity. "Because they're children. Children don't deserve to die for the choices of adults." The pack leader studied her for a long moment. "You could have killed them all. It would have been tactically sound." "Maybe, but it wouldn't have been right." Could hear sounds from the other side of the rock barrier. Her surviving defenders and the evacuated civilians were safe, at least for now. She had accomplished her mission. The cost was her own life, but that was a price she was willing to pay. The pack leader raised his weapon, pointing it directly at S's heart. She closed her eyes, thinking of her family on Earth, of the children she had saved, of the young aliens who would live to see another day because of her choice. The weapon discharged and fell to the stone floor of the tunnel, her blood mixing with the purple dust of an alien world. But her story was far from over. Unknown to, the young she had saved included the offspring of the pack leader himself. Her act of mercy toward enemy children would plant seeds that would grow into something no one could have predicted. In the days that followed, word of sacrifice would spread throughout the fleet and eventually to their home world. A human had chosen to save young at the cost of her own life. It was an act so contrary to everything they understood about warfare and survival that it shook their entire worldview. The mining colony fell that day, but its legacy was just beginning. Her death would start a revolution in society that would eventually transform the relationship between predator and prey species throughout the galaxy. As her life faded away in that dark tunnel, could not have imagined that one day millions of warriors would carry swords bearing her name, or that human children would learn her story in schools across 100 worlds. She died as she had lived, protecting those who could not protect themselves, and showing that humanity's greatest strength was not in its weapons or ships, but in its capacity for mercy and sacrifice in the darkest of moments. 3 months after the fall of the mining colony on 442B, the pack leader Ka sat in his personal quarters aboard the warship Blood Harvest. Before him lay a small device containing recordings of the battle, which he had watched dozens of times since returning to the fleet. The image of the human female saving his son and the other young kept replaying in his mind. Ka had led successful raids on 47 worlds. He had killed thousands of enemies in honorable combat. Never once had he questioned the way of the warrior that had governed society for. Until now. "Father," came a voice from the doorway. Ka looked up to see his son Ra, now fully grown and preparing for his first independent hunt. The young warrior's eyes held a confusion that matched his father's own. "The human female," Ra said quietly. "She saved my life, why?" Ka had been asking himself the same question. In culture, enemies were meant to be destroyed without mercy. The strong conquered the weak. Young warriors learned by watching their elders eliminate threats. Yet this human had thrown away her tactical advantage and her own life to protect enemy offspring. "I do not know, my son. Her actions make no sense according to the warrior code." Ra approached the viewing screen where final moments played in slow motion. "The other pack leaders say she was weak, that humans are soft creatures who cannot make hard choices." "Do you believe that?" Ka asked. "No," Ra's voice was firm. "I saw her fight. She killed new and in single combat. She held a defensive position against impossible odds for nearly an hour. She was not weak." Ka nodded slowly. He had reached the same conclusion. had been a formidable warrior by any measure. Her choice to save the young had not come from weakness, but from some other motivation that society had no framework to understand. I have been studying human military records, Ra continued. Their warriors often sacrifice themselves to protect civilians. They have medals and honors for those who die saving others. It seems to be a fundamental part of their nature. Impossible, Ka said, though his tone lacked conviction. No species can survive with such inefficient resource allocation. The strong must consume the weak or both will perish. Yet humans have spread to over 200 worlds in less than 3 centuries. Their population grows while ours stagnates. Their technology advances while we merely steal and adapt what others create. Ka felt something dangerous stirring in his thoughts. To question the warrior code was forbidden, but the evidence was becoming harder to ignore. Humanity was thriving despite their supposed weakness. Other species allied with them willingly instead of being conquered by force. Report to the bridge, Ka ordered. We will discuss this later. After his son left, Ka accessed the ship's communication system. What he was about to do could be considered treason, but he needed answers that only humans could provide. 3 days later, the Blood Harvest intercepted a human cargo vessel near the trade routes. Standard procedure would have been to attack immediately, taking whatever valuable cargo the ship carried and killing all witnesses. Instead, Ka sent a message. Human vessel, this is Pack Leader Ka of the War Fleet. I wish to speak with your captain. You will not be harmed if you comply. The response came after several minutes of delay. This is Captain Jennifer of the merchant ship Aurora's Dream. We're not carrying military supplies or weapon components. Our cargo manifest is available for your inspection. I do not want your cargo, human. I want answers. An hour later, Captain sat across from Ka in the Blood Harvest's meeting chamber. She was a small woman by human standards, gray-haired and calm despite being surrounded by alien predators. 2 of her crew members flanked her, both trying to look brave while obviously terrified. You want to know about? Captain said before Ka could speak. Word of what happened on 442B has spread through human space. She's being called a hero. Why? Ka asked. She failed to protect her colony. Everyone died. Did they? Captain raised an eyebrow. According to our intelligence reports, 68 civilians escaped through the deep cave systems. They were rescued by a mining transport that arrived 2 days after the attack. Those people are alive because gave them time to reach safety. Ka felt something twist in his stomach. The evacuation records had been incomplete. He had assumed the few energy signatures detected in the deep caves were scanner errors. Even if that is true, Ka said, she chose to save our young instead of achieving victory. This makes no tactical sense. Captain leaned forward slightly. Tell me, Pack Leader, do you have children? Yes, 3 offspring. Would you want them to die for the mistakes of their parents? The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Ka found himself thinking of Ra, of his 2 daughters who were still in their learning years. The idea of them being killed by enemies filled him with rage, but also with something else. Fear, protectiveness, emotions that had no place in the warrior code. You saw our young as children first, enemies second, Captain continued. That's what humans do. We protect the innocent even when it costs us everything. But your species wages war. You have soldiers who kill. Yes, we fight when we must, but we try to minimize civilian casualties. We follow rules of engagement that protect non-combatants. We believe that how we fight is as important as whether we win. Ka struggled to process this concept. Inefficient, the strong should take what they need. Should they? Captain asked. Your people have been raiding and conquering for 1,000 years. How many worlds do you control? How large is your population? How advanced is your technology compared to when you started? The questions struck like physical blows. Expansion had slowed dramatically in recent centuries. Their population was declining due to constant warfare. Most of their advanced weapons and ships were stolen or from other species. Humans became the dominant species in our local sector not through conquest, but through cooperation, Captain explained. We trade with dozens of species. We share technology and knowledge. We build alliances based on mutual benefit rather than fear. You are weak, Ka said, but the words felt hollow. Are we? Our ships are faster than yours. Our weapons are more accurate. Our economy is 50 times larger than your entire civilization's output. We achieved all of this in less time than your people have spent raiding border worlds. Ka stood abruptly, packing to the chamber's viewport. Outside, he could see Captain's cargo ship, small and unarmed, but somehow representing something vast and powerful that he didn't understand. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "Because saved your children. Because she saw something worth protecting in them, even though they belonged to her enemies. Maybe there's something worth protecting in all of us." After the humans were released and their ship departed, Ka called a meeting of his senior officers. The discussion that followed would have been unthinkable just weeks earlier. The humans spoke of cooperation instead of conquest, Ka told them. Of protecting the weak rather than consuming them. These ideas contradict everything we have been taught. "They contradict the natural order," growled Subpack leader Moore. "The strong rule, the weak serve or die. This has always been the way." "Has it?" Ra spoke up, earning sharp looks from the older warriors. "I have been researching our own history. Before the great conquests began, our people lived in stable communities. We had art and literature and scientific advancement. The warrior code is only 800 years old." "Lies," Moore snarled. "We have always been warriors." Ka held up a hand for silence. "Bring me the historical archives, all of them." For the next 3 days, the leadership of the Blood Harvest pored over records that had been stored but largely ignored for centuries. What they found challenged every assumption about society. Before the warrior code, civilization had indeed been peaceful and prosperous. They had been explorers and traders, not conquerors. The shift to a warrior culture had begun after contact with a now-extinct species called the Devourers, who had attacked colonies without warning or mercy. In response, society had militarized completely. They had adopted the philosophy that only the strong deserved to survive, and that showing mercy to enemies was a fatal weakness. The transformation had been so complete that within a few generations, most believed they had always been warriors. "We became the thing we fought against," Ra said quietly as they reviewed the final records. "We turned ourselves into devourers." The realization hit Ka like a physical blow. For 8 centuries, his people had been living according to the philosophy of their ancient enemies. They had abandoned their true nature in pursuit of survival, and in doing so had lost their souls. "What do you propose we do with this knowledge?" asked Subpack leader Ka, the only female among the senior officers. Ka was quiet for a long moment. "The humans saved our young because she believed they could be better than their parents. Perhaps it is time we proved her right." "You speak of changing the entire foundation of our society," Moore warned. "The other pack leaders will never accept it. The High Council will declare you traitor and exile you to the void." "Then we will start small," Ka decided. "We will change ourselves first and hope others follow." Over the following weeks, the crew of the Blood Harvest began to transform their ship and their mission. Instead of raiding defenseless colonies, they started targeting pirates and slavers that preyed on civilian populations. They rescued captured vessels and returned stolen goods to their owners. The change was not easy. Many crew members struggled with orders that contradicted their training and instincts. Some requested transfers to other ships, but others, especially the younger warriors like Ra, embraced the new approach with enthusiasm. Word of the Blood Harvest's strange new behavior spread through the fleet. Most pack leaders dismissed it as temporary madness. Some called for Ka's removal from command, but a few began to ask questions of their own. The turning point came when the Blood Harvest encountered a human colony ship under attack by raiders. Standard protocol would have been to let the attackers finish their work and then pick through the wreckage. Instead, Ka ordered an attack on the. The battle was brief but intense. The ships were fast but lightly armed. Against military vessels, they had no chance. Within minutes, the raiders were destroyed or fleeing. "Human colony ship, this is Pack Leader Ka," he broadcast on open channels. "The threat has been eliminated. You are safe to continue your journey." The response came after a long pause. "This is Captain of the New Horizons. Thank you, but why did you help us?" Ka looked at the image of that he had mounted on his command chamber wall. "Because someone once showed us that strength should be used to protect, not to prey. Her name was." There was another long pause. "Captain here, I've heard that name. She died protecting a mining colony from your people." "She died protecting our children," Ka corrected. "And in doing so, she taught us that we could be better than we were." When news of the encounter reached human space, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Already considered a hero for her sacrifice, became a symbol of humanity's capacity to inspire change even in their enemies. But more importantly, her story began to spread through space as well. Young warriors who had grown up hearing only tales of conquest and domination suddenly learned of a human who had died to save children. The cognitive dissonance was profound. Ka began receiving messages from other pack leaders, some critical but others curious. A few ships quietly began following the Blood Harvest's example, protecting civilian vessels and striking only against true threats. The High Council of Leadership eventually summoned Ka to answer for his actions. He went willingly, knowing that he might not return, but he also knew that the seed had planted with her sacrifice was beginning to grow. Standing before the assembled pack leaders and elders, Ka told them the truth about their history and the choice that lay before them. He spoke of courage and the price of continuing down their current path. "We can remain predators," he concluded, "taking what we need through violence until we consume ourselves and fade into extinction. Or we can remember what we once were and become something greater than we ever imagined possible." The debate that followed lasted for 3 days. In the end, the High Council was split almost evenly. Some pack leaders clung to the old ways, while others embraced the possibility of change. The civilization found itself at a crossroads, with sacrifice serving as the catalyst for a revolution that would reshape their entire society. But the transformation would not be easy, and not all would accept it. The real test was yet to come. 50 years had passed since died in a mining tunnel on 442b. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted on that dark day when humanity lost one of its heroes. Ambassador Sarah Martinez walked through the halls of the Grand Station, humanity's largest diplomatic facility, preparing for the most important ceremony in recent galactic history. Today, representatives from 43 species would witness the signing of the Accords, a comprehensive peace treaty that would end centuries of conflict between predator and prey civilizations. Sarah paused before a massive statue in the station's central plaza. The bronze figure depicted a human woman in security uniform, her arms outstretched protectively in front of a group of alien children. The inscription below read, "She chose mercy over victory and changed the stars." "Magnificent, isn't it?" came a familiar rumbling voice behind her. Sarah turned to see Ra, now the High Commander of the Defense Forces. The massive alien warrior wore formal diplomatic attire, but at his side hung an ornate sword with name etched into its blade in both human and script. "I never tire of seeing it," Sarah replied. "Would be amazed to know what her sacrifice accomplished." "Perhaps she does know," Ra said thoughtfully. "My people have a saying, the spirits of the honored dead guide the living toward wisdom. Your spirit has guided us well these past decades." Sarah smiled. It was still remarkable to hear such words from her. When she had first taken her position as chief human diplomat 15 years ago, the idea of speaking about spirits guiding them toward wisdom would have been laughable. Back then, they were still primarily known as raiders and conquerors. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. After the High Council's split decision 50 years ago, society had effectively divided into 2 factions. The traditionalists, led by hard-line pack leaders, continued to follow the old warrior code. They viewed Ka's reforms as weakness and corruption. The progressives, as they came to be known, followed Ka's example. They transformed their military vessels into protection fleets, defending trade routes and civilian populations. They established the first interspecies cooperation agreements in history. For 20 years, the 2 factions had waged a bitter civil war. The galaxy held its breath as the most militarily powerful predator species fought against itself. Some hoped they would destroy each other entirely. Others feared that the winners would emerge even more dangerous than before. Humanity had faced a difficult choice during those dark years. Military advisors recommended supporting the traditionalists, believing that a fractured and weakened civilization posed less threat than a unified one. But the civilian leadership, inspired by this example, chose to quietly aid the progressives with supplies and intelligence. The turning point had come during the Battle of the Twin Suns, where progressive forces led by Ra faced off against a massive traditionalist fleet. The progressives were outnumbered 3-1, and facing certain defeat when a human task force arrived unexpectedly. Admiral Stone's own niece had direct orders to lead her ships into the battle. "Died protecting children," she had transmitted to both fleets. "Today, we protect the who are trying to honor her memory." The joint human progressive victory had turned the tide of the Civil War. Within 2 years, the traditionalists were in full retreat. Many surrendered rather than face combined human progressive forces. Others fled to the galaxy's outer rim, where some small factions still operated as pirates and raiders. But the end of the Civil War was only the beginning. Story had spread far beyond human and space. Other predator species had heard of the human who died saving enemy children and of the revolution that followed. The longtime rivals of humanity had been the next to transform. Their warrior poet culture had been particularly moved by sacrifice. They began composing epic ballads about her courage, and their philosophy gradually shifted from conquest to protection of the weak. The predators who had terrorized shipping lanes for generations underwent their own internal revolution. Their hive minds began to incorporate concepts of mercy and protection that they had learned from story. They transformed their war fleets into exploration and rescue vessels. One by one, the galaxy's major predator civilizations began to change. Not all of them, and not completely, but enough to shift the balance of power toward cooperation rather than constant conflict. "The ceremony begins in an hour," Ra reminded Sarah. "Are you prepared?" "As ready as anyone can be for making history," Sarah replied. "Though I have to admit I'm nervous about they've been predators longer than any other species we know of." They were the most recent addition to the peace accords. Their vast empire had dominated an entire spiral arm of the galaxy for. They were older, more advanced, and more dangerous than any other predator species. When their massive ships had appeared at the edge of human space 6 months ago, every military force in the galaxy had prepared for the war to end all wars. Instead, the fleet had come bearing gifts and a message that stunned everyone. "We come to learn from the one called, whose story has reached even our ancient realm. We wish to understand this concept of mercy that has transformed so many." "The honor strength above all else," Ra said. "But they have watched as species that embraced teachings grew stronger while those that rejected them grew weaker. They are pragmatists above all." Sarah nodded. The economic and technological benefits of the new cooperative model had indeed been dramatic. The formerly predatory species that had joined the Accords had seen massive improvements in their standards of living. Trade agreements, technology sharing, and joint scientific ventures had accelerated development across all participating civilizations. For instance, had gone from a stagnant warrior culture to become one of the galaxy's premier shipbuilding civilizations. Their vessels, originally designed for war, had been adapted for exploration, cargo transport, and scientific research. Their population had tripled in 50 years. "Shall we?" Ra gestured toward the ceremonial hall. The Great Assembly Chamber was the largest enclosed space on Grand Station, designed to accommodate representatives from species with vastly different size and environmental requirements. Sarah took her place at the human delegation table, while Ra moved to the section. As the ceremony began, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The process of drafting the Accords had taken 7 years of negotiations. Every clause had been debated, every word carefully chosen. The document established universal principles for the protection of civilian populations, rules for conflict resolution, and frameworks for cooperative development. Most importantly, it formally recognized what had become known as the doctrine, the principle that true strength came from protecting the vulnerable rather than exploiting them. High Diplomat Ka, now elderly but still commanding, approached the signing podium. In his hands, he carried the ceremonial sword that would be used to seal the Accords. The weapon was a masterwork of craftsmanship, its blade forged from metals found on 43 different worlds, one for each signatory species. Along the fuller of the blade's name was inscribed in the written languages of every participating civilization. At the swords, a small crystal contained actual soil from 442b, taken from the tunnel where it made her final stand. "Honored representatives," Ka's voice carried clearly through the chamber's translation systems, "we gather today not as predators and prey, but as children of the same stars. We are here because one human being chose mercy over vengeance, protection over conquest, hope over fear. He raised the sword high, its blade catching the light from the chamber's central star display. Died believing that even the children of her enemies deserved to live. Today, we prove that her faith in us was not misplaced. One by one, the representatives of each species approached the podium. Instead of signing with traditional instruments, each leader drew a small amount of their own blood and used it to mark their names on the accords. It was an ancient ritual borrowed from culture, symbolizing that they were binding themselves with their very lives. When the Supreme Elder's turn came, the ancient being moved slowly to the podium. There were energy beings who rarely took physical form, but for this ceremony, their leader had manifested as a tall, luminous humanoid figure. "I am older than most civilizations," the Supreme Elder said in a voice like distant thunder. "I have seen species rise and fall, empires crumble, stars die and be reborn. Never have I witnessed the power that resided in one small human's choice to show mercy to the young of her enemies." The Supreme Elder drew energy from its own essence, creating a brilliant golden mark on the accords. "We pledge ourselves to the path that illuminated. May her name guide us toward a future worthy of her sacrifice." As the ceremony concluded, Sarah found herself thinking about's family. Her sister Maria, now an elderly grandmother, was watching the broadcast from Earth. His nephew, the baby she had wanted to visit, was now a ship captain himself, leading one of the joint human exploration missions that had become common in recent years. "Ambassador Martinez," came a voice from behind her. Sarah turned to see a young human officer she didn't recognize. "I'm Lieutenant," the officer said. "Named after the hero. I serve aboard the ZHS, the first ship built under the Joint Construction Program." Sarah shook the young woman's hand. "Would be proud to know that her name lives on in such honorable service." "I hope so, ma'am. We try to live up to her example every day." As the delegates began to file out of the chamber, Ra approached Sarah once more. "There is something I must tell you," he said quietly. "Something that was decided by the High Council just this morning." "What is it?" Ra drew his ceremonial sword, the one bearing's name. "From this day forward, every warrior who chooses the path of protection over conquest will be granted one of these. We call them blades. They will serve as reminders of the human who showed us that true strength lies in mercy." He resheathed the sword with practiced grace. "More than that, we have established the Order of Shield. It is open to members of any species who dedicate their lives to protecting the innocent. The first members were inducted this morning." "Who were they?" "The 68 humans who survived the mining colony attack. They have spent their lives telling story and working for peace between our peoples. It seemed fitting that they should be the first to receive formal recognition." Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes. Those survivors had indeed become powerful advocates for peace. Their first-hand testimony about courage and the price of war had swayed countless hearts and minds over the decades. "There's more," Ra continued. "The Order's headquarters will be built on 442B at the site of the old mining colony. It will serve as a training academy for peacekeepers and a memorial to sacrifice." As Sarah left the ceremony, she made a mental note to visit 442B soon. She had never been to the world where died, but she felt a need to see the place where everything had begun. 3 months later, Sarah stood in the tunnel where had made her last stand. The rocky walls had been carefully preserved, and a simple crystal marker indicated the exact spot where the security chief had fallen. Around the marker, fresh flowers from dozens of worlds created a rainbow of colors in the dim light. The mining colony had been rebuilt as a research station and memorial site. The deep caves where civilians had hidden now housed a museum dedicated to life and the transformation of galactic civilization that followed her death. Thousands of visitors came every year, representing species that had once been bitter enemies. "She would have liked this place," said a voice behind Sarah. She turned to see an elderly human woman with kind eyes and silver hair. "You must be Maria," Sarah said, recognizing sister from old photographs. "I am. I finally made the trip out here to see where died. I kept putting it off, but when I heard about the Order's academy being built here." Maria's voice trailed off as she looked around the tunnel. "She saved so many lives," Sarah said. "Not just that day, but every day since." Maria nodded. "Always said that a life spent protecting others was a life worth living. I don't think she could have imagined how many lives her protection would touch." As they stood together in the quiet tunnel, Sarah thought about the galaxy that Sacrifice had helped create. Conflicts still existed, of course. There were still pirates and raiders, still territorial disputes and resource conflicts. But the great predator-prey cycle that had dominated galactic politics had been broken. Species that had once lived in fear of each other now worked together on massive projects. The Great Observatory, a joint venture between 17 civilizations, was mapping distant galaxies. The Eden Project was terraforming dead worlds into garden paradises for any species that needed new homes. Children across the galaxy learned story in their schools. Artists created works inspired by her courage. Scientists named discoveries after her. And yes, countless warriors carried swords bearing her name. But perhaps most importantly, her example had taught an entire galaxy that strength and compassion were not opposites, but rather two sides of the same coin. That protecting the innocent was not a weakness to be exploited, but a source of power that could transform civilizations. As Sarah prepared to leave 442B, she made one final stop at its memorial marker. She placed a small crystal flower among the others, a gift from the diplomatic gardens where representatives from across the galaxy worked together to nurture new forms of life. "Thank you," she whispered to the memory of a woman she had never met but whose legacy had shaped her entire career. "Thank you for showing us that mercy is not weakness, but the strongest force in the universe." Above them, the purple sun of 442B was setting, casting long shadows through the tunnel. But outside, the lights of the Order's Academy gleamed against the darkening sky, and ships from a dozen species prepared for departure to spread teachings to worlds not yet touched by her story. The galaxy was vast, and there was still much work to be done. But thanks to one security chief who chose to save enemy children at the cost of her own life, the stars themselves seemed brighter with hope. Had become more than a hero. She had become a force of nature, a catalyst for change that continued to ripple outward through space and time. And as long as beings gathered under alien suns to protect the innocent, as long as warriors carried swords bearing her name, as long as children learned that mercy was a form of strength, her legacy would endure. In death had achieved something greater than any conqueror or emperor. She had changed the fundamental nature of civilization itself, one act of selfless courage at a time. The mining colony that had fallen 50 years ago was gone forever. But from its ashes had risen something beautiful beyond imagining. A galaxy where predator and prey could become protector and protected, where ancient enemies could become family, where the sacrifice of one could save countless millions. Had kept her promise. She had protected those who could not protect themselves, and in doing so she had protected them all.